oh my god, it's finally happening. It looks so good. The screen is so much bigger, and those Joy-Cons. Is that a new Mario Kart? Finally! These models look so good, they look so expressive. Look at Mario, look at Peach, look at Yoshi, look at... Who the hell is that? Mario Kart World, the latest entry in Nintendo's most popular franchise of all time, is, unsurprisingly, very, very good. It is undoubtedly the most inventive, visually stunning, and thrilling game in the franchise, featuring a plethora of new modes, characters, mechanics, and more. At the same time, however, this game proves to be endlessly frustrating to many, with a few questionable design decisions and a lack of options given to the player. Nintendo wants this game to be played in a very specific way, and I'm not quite sure it's the right one. Every Mario Kart game in recent years has had a gimmick. Ever since Double Dash, Nintendo has had a new thing to differentiate this entry from the previous one. Whether it be bikes or gliders, underwater racing or anti-gravity, AR Mario Kart or motion sickness Mario Kart, Mario Kart is a franchise that loves to reinvent itself with new ideas at every turn. And for this entry, Nintendo has decided to take Mario Kart to the open world. Or should I say, open road. We'll get to you. The far more interesting addition to Mario Kart World, however, is the newly added movement mechanics: charge jumping, rail grinding, and wall riding. By holding the R or ZR button while not turning, you'll do a little bunny hop and start charging a jump. From here, you can neutral jump in place or jump left or right. This can be used to jump over obstacles or bounce off of moving cars or other players, but it's also the easiest way to access our other two new mechanics. By landing on a rail via charge jump or just driving onto it, you'll begin rail grinding, a state where you'll perpetually charge a rail grind boost that you can release by tricking in place or back onto the main road. These rails are scattered all over Mario Kart World, integrated into nearly every track, allowing you to take tighter turns, separate yourself from the pack, and build up speed. There's also wall riding, a universal mechanic accessed by tricking into any wall-like surface, allowing you to drive up and down any wall for a limited amount of time. And to be entirely honest, I think this is a far more interesting way to defy gravity than anti-gravity in Mario Kart 8. Anti-gravity, while cool, rarely felt like it was changing the game mechanically. It allowed for interesting track layouts, the maps would visibly twist and turn as roads literally flipped upside down, but it never really felt like you were doing anything other than driving on a standard Mario Kart track. Maybe if the camera had its own field of gravity and you could visibly see your character on the side or top of the screen, but I imagine that would make controlling your character much more difficult and confusing. Either way, Mario Kart World's integration of walls as a part of the core track design has allowed for significantly more expansive and dense tracks with a plethora of opportunities for player expression. There's also been some adjustments to air tricks. You can now do multiple tricks in midair with different left, right, forward, and backward variations. Tricking in any given direction will shift you slightly in the direction that you choose and sway your air mobility, allowing you to change your positioning midair for better alignment on rails, walls, or other platforms. These new movement additions are what make Mario Kart World as fun as it is, and I hope they become staples in the next entry. I would honestly hate to go back to just driving on the ground again. But what's good mechanics without good tracks to use them on? And Mario Kart World has plenty of amazing tracks, some of the best in the series, I would say. But how do they stack up against one another? So without further ado, here is my patented Mario Kart World track tier list. Okay, so I get what they were trying to do here. I think Nintendo wanted Koopa Troopa Beach to be this game's baby park, what with the very simple circular layout and extended lap count, but there are a few elements of this track that hold it back from doing so. To me, Baby Park is as fun and chaotic as it is because the area is small and completely enclosed. It can justify a simplistic route because shells and bombs will always be flying around in an area that a player is actually likely to be driving on. In Koopa Troopa Beach, whiffing a green shell won't have it bounce off a wall or anything. It just flies off into the distance, never to be seen again. The claustrophobicness is lost, and instead you're left with a short, boring, and honestly kind of pointless track. It also doesn't make any use of Mario Kart World's new wall riding or rail mechanics, which, as you'll find, is a common trend among these bottom tier tracks. At least the theming is great, with an endless party and parade floats accompanied by an excellent EDM remix of the original song. I do not like Choco Mountain, and honestly, I never have. I always found the theming to be kind of boring, and while I do appreciate the transition to Mountain Sports Arena from the original's Mountain, I still think the track is kind of forgettable visually. It also doesn't make great use of the rail or wall riding mechanics with a whopping 2 interactions. The first one is in the middle of the track. A charge jump and wall ride will bring you over to this small platform where hopefully you have an off-road item to get through this chocolate mud. Otherwise... And the other is this rail route where you follow the outer edge and trick onto these charge and chuck billboards. This route looks cool, but is much slower than just taking the standard route. Speed isn't everything, and there's more value to be found from these shortcuts like items, safety, or seclusion. In this case though, right before the finish line and with no items to be grabbed, I find myself avoiding the risk and just bolting for the end. Starview Peak is so incredibly tragic, man. When it was initially revealed, I was ecstatic at the prospect of a galaxy-inspired track sitting at the top of a snowy mountain built around the Comet Observatory. I've always loved Mario Kart tracks based on real locations in the main Mario universe, places like Yoshi's Island, Tick-Tock Clock, Luigi's Mansion, and Royal Raceway. Their inclusions help to make the larger Mario universe feel like a real interconnected world. So it is with a heavy heart that I say this Super Mario Galaxy, Rosalina-themed, snowy ice mountain track at the top of the world is ass. This shit is ass. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It breaks my heart because it was 100% one of the tracks I was looking forward to the most. That isn't to say there aren't things to love about this track. No, this track is absolutely gorgeous. The way the water glows and reflects the falling snow as you coast through the snowflake-shaped boost rings is wonderful, with excellent environmental detail. Maybe they put so much detail into it so you have something to look at while you surf through one massive water turn and one ramp. The homage to Ice Ice Outpost is neat, and it's kinda cool that you can ride the borders of the river to get a little speed boost out of the water, but otherwise, this track just doesn't have that much to actually do on it. I think a nice way to add some hazards onto this track would be to break up the river into multiple paths with floating pools you can charge jump or feather into. Also, add a few more of those ground driving opportunities. This would add a lot more interactivity to this largely uninteresting segment. Also, let us drive through the library of the observatory on the regular track rather than only via a route. I'm very passionate about Starview Peak. Desert Hills is here to fill a quota. They probably needed a desert track and wanted to find one that hadn't been remade in a while and landed on Desert Hills. In that case, why not just bring back Dry Dry Ruins from Mario Kart Wii? That track hasn't been remade outside of Tour, and it is much more popular than Desert Hills. Hell, bring back Yoshi Desert from Super Circuit. That track isn't very interesting either, but at least you'd have some set pieces like the pyramids or Yoshi Pharaoh statues to integrate into the track itself and make essentially a whole new track out of it. As it stands, Desert Hills just isn't that exciting to race on. With a lack of player interactivity and small humps rather than hills, I will say I do appreciate the Super Mario Land and Sarasa Land influence all over this track, with the Toko Tokos running around making for a good hazard. The final stretch also has a few options for the player, with a glider path on the left to avoid an incoming shock, some rail grinding into an Oasis ramp on the right, or a straight shot through the middle. Otherwise, just not a worthwhile inclusion. Peach Beach is the first of a few multi-section tracks, with the first lap taking place in the original Peach Beach from Double Dash, with a few minimal changes aside from the obviously now drivable Oceanside. On the second lap, you race up the outskirts of a resort into a bustling town filled with walls, ramps, and ropes. Afterwards, you're sent off a towering glider ramp and you coast back to sea level. There are a couple of wall jump opportunities onto the roofs of the nearby buildings where you can collect items and coins as a reward for doing so. The final lap, however, falls a bit short. It's essentially one giant turn with not enough hazards or things to interact with. There's a little mushroom shortcut or a charge jump shortcut if you're feeling ambitious, but it could have been so much more. I imagine they could have filled that final stretch with miniature islands to drive around, or maybe even drive off trick ramps from island to island. Anything other than the last stretch we have currently. This track has high highs and low lows. Mario Bros. Circuit is pretty alright. For the very first track in the game, I'm honestly decently impressed. It's got a great atmosphere with the rustic desert canyon environment and the surrounding gas stations and burger joints, and the track's theme song puts World's patented harmonica to terrific use. It's got a decent tutorial for the rails, a nice mushroom shortcut bursting through some leftover tires, and a few fun alternate pathways and room for experimentation. At the end of the day, it's still a circuit track. The layout is very simple and there isn't much in the way of hazards. Despite its shortcomings, it's a good time and a great introduction to this Mario Kart world. Peach Stadium is good. I appreciate the sense of scale in this track. It's one of the few tracks that would very obviously be utilizing anti-gravity if that mechanic were kept from 8. As the centerpiece of this Mario Kart world and the penultimate track in the Special Cup, Peach Stadium has a lot to live up to. And while I don't think it hits the highs of this game's best tracks, it's still an enjoyable ride around our favorite Royal Palace. With really only one alternate pathway accessed by charge jumping off of this boost panel onto a nearby roof that essentially guarantees taking this sharp rail turn, which is otherwise only accessible via a feather, Peach Stadium can feel a bit repetitive when driving a full 3 laps. Not bad, but not great either. Dry Bones Burnout is a decently popular track, and while I do like it, I don't love it. The Day of the Dead aesthetic and the track being built atop of a Dry Bones bones is a really fun vibe, but playing on the track itself just doesn't do it for me. My least favorite aspect of this track would be the odd item placements. After you take the glider about halfway through the track, there's one more set of items before you finish the lap. This decision makes it really easy to abuse the shock on this track and makes bagging very annoying. Honestly, this placement is more based on a gut feeling than anything else. I can see why people enjoy this track, it's just not for me personally, and I find it to be overshadowed by the other lava region tracks. Cheep Cheep Falls is exhilarating. From the falling leaves and feudal Japan aesthetic to the energetic flute and the shocking electric guitar, the atmosphere of this track is phenomenal. I honestly didn't care too much for the track at first, it took me a while to get accustomed to the new water physics. Once I got the hang of it though, I started to look more favorably upon this track. Cheep Cheep Falls doesn't have much in the way of major shortcuts, but it's very satisfying to discover the alternate routes and master the racing rapids in the second half of the track. We did not need to bring Moo Moo Meadows back, I'm sorry. We've been racing on this track for over a decade at this point, and I'm ready to move on. There's nothing really wrong with this iteration of Moo Moo Meadows, I'm just burned out of it. It's got a solid layout, some fun hazards, a couple of big shortcuts you can pull off, including this mushroom charge jump cut that cuts a massive turn, and it gave us cow, so it's fine. The original Dino Dino Jungle felt more like a zoo enclosure with a whopping 1 dinosaur on the track, whereas this variation really leans into their Jurassic Park inspirations with multiple roaming and rampaging dinosaurs scattered across the track. The middle of the track has also been reimagined, with the original taking place in a sunken cave and World's version being an abandoned laboratory. I like this change, and I like how this track implements World's mechanics in inventive ways. Rail grinding along the back of a dinosaur is an additional path, and tricking off of a T-Rex as it bursts through the lab walls is an exciting set piece. There are also geysers bursting periodically across the track, and while hitting one essentially guarantees you'll lose all your momentum, you can trick off of inactive geysers or the edges of an erupting one to maintain your speed, creating a fun risk-reward scenario where you need to make quick decisions to maximize your lead. Boost Cinema has the same issues as Starview Peak, where it doesn't make use of this game's core mechanics as much as I'd like. Unlike Starview Peak, however, I enjoy this track immensely. This is, without a doubt, my favorite haunted track in the entire series for its creative environment, set pieces, and atmosphere. A haunted cinema is such a fun location to explore, and I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner. I love how the screen counts down based on your proximity to it, so it always hits 0 just as you enter the screen. And how the entire track within the screen is built upon spinning film reels with frames of Peach being shocked as if she were acting in a horror movie. I also like how you can drive on those spinning reels to gain extra speed while taking a tighter turn, but they alternate direction on each lap, so you need to drive the track differently each time. All that being said, This track is essentially still just a big figure 8 with not a lot of shortcut potential, and I wish it were more. Mario Circuit is probably one of the best Super Mario Kart track remakes in the series, which is funny because all they really did was put Mario Circuit 1, 2, and 3 into one multi-section track. Not Mario Circuit 4 though. F*** Mario Circuit 4. Seriously, all the variants of SNES Mario Circuit have been remade multiple times except Mario Circuit 4. What is Nintendo's beef with this track? World's Mario Circuit is still one of the shortest in the game, so I don't see why they couldn't have just plopped Mario Circuit 4 in there as well and made it a 4-lap track. Anyways, while Mario Circuit doesn't have rails or walls to spice things up, it still has plenty of interesting interactions and moments for player expression. On previous remakes of SNES tracks, there would either be no barriers or barrier blocks the size of mountains that prevent you from getting out of bounds. In Mario Kart World, the barrier blocks are just small enough to where you can charge jump onto them to create your own shroomless shortcuts on the fly. There are also ramps around the edges of the track where in some cases you can use a mushroom or a nearby food item to launch yourself slightly out of bounds to skip a turn. Mario Circuit is pretty fun. Dandelion Depths takes you on a grand expedition through a Parabitty-Buddy themed underground mining facility. While this track isn't the flashiest with its simple roller coaster-esque layout and subterranean atmosphere, there's still plenty to love about Dandelion Depths. That first striking drift around the chasm leading up to the mines is nothing short of breathtaking. I can't think of many layered tracks like this one that allow you to see into other sections of the racetrack in the distance. The only other one I can recall is Dino Dino Jungle, which also returns in World. Overlapping segments like these help to make these locations feel real, which is especially purposeful in a game like Mario Kart World. After exploring the mines, you burst out into the open cave waters, where your goal is to properly time tricks in succession to race the rapids and make your escape ascent before completing the lap. There are a few cool wall ride alternate paths, but nothing noteworthy. It's a pretty simple track, but a fun one nonetheless. Acorn Heights feels like a backpacking hike in a faraway land, with enormous roots and leaves serving as terrain for you to grind, trick, and fly across. I love rail grinding on the roots and leaves, taking the various pathways through the canyon, and pulling off some very precise wall ride jumps before ascending back up these curving tree roots as you dodge massive acorns and items. This track is one I feel best represents what Mario Kart World is at its core. In an interview with Mario Kart World's development team, Mario Kart World's art director Masaki Ishikawa described how the approach in art direction and game feel differed between World and previous entries. For example, Mario Kart 8's visual design was to be sleek, futuristic, and aerodynamic, and tuned for the road, whereas Mario Kart World took a more playful and all-terrain approach. I think Acorn Heights is one of the few tracks that took that new approach and identity to heart and truly captured that whimsical, adventurous feeling. That, accompanied by an excellent track theme with powerful bagpipes to drive the player, makes Acorn Heights an incredibly fun and exciting track. Nintendo is now 3 for 3 on the big tree tracks being really cool. Toad Factory returns from Mario Kart Wii, and it's basically the same as it was back then. But Toad Factory was really good in Mario Kart Wii, and it's really good here. It's got the same crushers, the same conveyor belts. There's a newly added rail path above the main path and a shortcut across the hanging steel beams after you exit the factory, but otherwise, the track is relatively untouched, and that's okay. I do wish they kept the boxes on the outdoor conveyor belts as a hazard, but that's a minor nitpick of an otherwise great recreation of a fan-favorite track. Faraway Oasis is a track I didn't exactly mesh with at first, as I found the main route to be a little dull. Eventually though, I started to get the hang of this track and master its shortcuts. I'm a big fan of this track's set pieces, from the ascent up the rickety wooden bridge to the long drift across the roaring waterfall. This track perfectly captures the essence of the Savannah Wilds. The best part about this track, however, is the flow state. There's never a moment where you aren't rail grinding, tricking, water bouncing, or drifting. This track is constant action, and maintaining your speed while pulling off all these tricks is immensely satisfying. Failing at any point though can be devastating, as many of these advanced paths take place over deep waters or huge off-road patches, making rejoining the pack especially difficult. Mario Kart World's Rainbow Road is absolutely magical. The presentation, the music, the homages to nearly every previous Rainbow Road, it truly feels like a culmination of everything the series has built up to till now. You've got the thwomps from Super Mario Kart, the jumps and skips from Super Circuit, the marathon-like track length from 64, the route from Peach Stadium has a tunnel-like launch point to the track like Double Dash, the split and winding paths from Wii, the intergalactic travel and otherworldly planets from 7, and the space station from 8. This track really pays its respects to Mario Kart's entire history. My biggest issue with this track is that it doesn't do much to honor this entry. There are no rails or walls in this track whatsoever. It is purely a classic Mario Kart track. And for some, that's great. For me, I've made it abundantly clear how much I enjoy the core mechanics of this game, and I wanted World's final track to provide that final challenge, to really put these skills I've mastered to the test. Unfortunately, it just doesn't do that. But it's still a great track. On my first playthrough, I damn near cried when the train drove by carrying Robo DK and other characters from our adventures through this world. The music is otherworldly and the visuals are fantastic. This Rainbow Road was a truly special experience, but between its long runtime and lack of interactivity at times, it isn't one of my favorite race tracks. DK Pass is the definition of don't judge a book by its cover. What seems to be a relatively simple ride through a snowy mountain resort is secretly one of the most technical and ambitious tracks in the game, at least shortcut-wise. Crossing huge cliffs by tricking off of a lamppost, scaling massive walls to skip entire turns, comboing charge jump tricks into rails, into wall rides, into tree bounces, DK Pass is a unique utilization of World's core mechanics at nearly every turn, which makes it a joy to practice and master. I do wish it retained some of the elements from its original DS run and Mario Kart 7 remake, like the snowman obstacles during the final stretch, or how the track is foggy for the first 2 laps and clears up during the third. Regardless, I still consider this remake to be a net improvement over the original. Back-to-back DK with DK Spaceport, a fantastic homage to the original Donkey Kong arcade game, and probably the best Mushroom Cup finale in any Mario Kart game. This chest-pumping romp up a rocket launch pad is one of the most frenetic and exciting tracks in the entire game. After an encounter with the station's security robot Robo DK or Guard Kong, you travel up 5 layers of the spaceport, each with its own retro DK-inspired obstacles and accompanying section of the track song. The first lap, as mentioned prior, gives you a grand view of the entire track as well as the Great Ape himself with a bombastic big band arrangement in the background. In lap 2, the music sounds most similar to its original arcade inspiration with iconic bleeps and bloops as you use launchers to jump over hurtling barrels. In lap 3, the retro backing track is joined by a lively piano, as the barrels switch orientation and are now traveling horizontally and must be dodged while gaining speed with the ramps. In lap 4, my personal favorite, the previous instrumentation is joined by an array of powerful brass instruments as you hop from rail to rail to avoid leftover bananas and incoming shells. In lap 5, as an electric guitar joins the fray, you're given the choice between 2 thin corridors, both prime for shell throws to easily hit an unsuspecting target. The best course of action here is to wall jump back and forth until you land on the wall dividing the 2 corridors. It's the safest place to be, and the trick boosts help to keep your momentum as you reach the final lap. Lap 6, the home stretch, is accompanied by a heart-pounding rendition of the arcade's hammer theme, as Robo DK himself hurls massive bouncing barrels at you and slams his palms into the ground, which can actually be tricked off of if timed correctly. While there isn't much in the way of shortcuts on this track, as nearly every shortcut on this track is a mushroom-only cut through an off-road turn, I think it encourages interesting item management on a more linear and execution-based track like this one. All of this to say, I love DK Spaceport. Despite its linearity and lack of major shortcuts, this track is certainly an all-time Mario Kart classic. Crown City is an incredibly dense and lively track with great set pieces and varied locales, but a slightly underwhelming midpoint holds it back from true greatness. To me, Crown City embodies Mario Kart World's strengths and flaws to a T, with very freeing and expansive routing in some sections and vast straight roads in the others. The first lap takes you from the Great Red Bridge through the bustling streets into the downtown alleys of Crown City, After taking a curve around the skate park, you're thrown into the central highway and have opportunities to bounce off of cars, rails, and lampposts as you barrel towards a parking garage at the end of the street. While I enjoy how cramped and frenetic the back alleys are with plenty of opportunities to break away to higher ground, the long straightaway isn't as engaging as it should be, with most people opting to straight trick on the rails until lap 2. On lap 2, you take a long drift upwards and boost out of the heights of Crown City's ongoing construction site, complete with solar panels and steel beams, dangling cranes, and towering skyscrapers. One of my favorite details about this course is really only noticeable during dusk and at night, where it becomes more obvious that the road you're driving on is actually a fallen piece of Rainbow Road. There's signage and iconography of the rainbow fragment all around Crown City and its surrounding areas, and it's so cool to see an aspect of an iconic track like Rainbow Road used as a teaser for what's to come. After touring the rainbow fragment, you jump through a wheel-shaped statue and drift into an upcoming glider ramp. This glider section over the aforementioned straightaway is a slight improvement over the first lap, as you're given multiple options to maximize speed and safety. If you want to maximize speed, you can head straight for the ground and rails to trick boost along the main path, but if you anticipate items or a shock, you can extend your glider by carefully weaving and tricking off the lampposts. The final section is my favorite, with 2 tight turns leading into a final dash for the finish line. After the item box set, you can charge jump onto a rooftop rail, where a well-timed left trick will send you into an auto trick off a lamppost into a tree onto a small edge of a nearby shop. You can leave bananas on the rail or throw shells backwards to maximize your front-running potential before the final set of item boxes. And you can do a variation of the cut shroomless if you're worried many people will try to take the cut. As one of the largest and most iconic locations for Mario Kart World, with an abundance of track variations accessed via routes, Crown City always feels fresh and exciting on each and every race. Mario Kart World's rendition feels like what Sky High Sundae was always meant to be. I've always loved Sky High Sundae, even back in Mario Kart 8 where it was widely considered to be an unpolished and jank track with clippable rails and awkward collision. I still loved it. I've always been a sucker for fantastical and larger-than-life tracks, and a colorful island made entirely of ice cream and other desserts is right up my alley. This track boasts a plethora of alternate routes that make no run of the track ever feel the same. Take this section for example. From the moment you reach the peak of the hill, you're faced with 4 potential paths. You can A, drop down, hugging the left path and snatch a few coins. This path is the easiest but leaves you the most vulnerable. B, you use an item, likely a shell or a horn, to burst through these boxes in the middle path. This way gives you a boost ramp and a straighter shot to the next section, but costs a valuable item and leaves the way open for racers behind you. C, you can charge jump to the left and rail grind on top of these shortbread cookies. It's the most difficult to execute, but offers more coins and sanctity from items as a reward. Or D, you can charge jump into the chasm and wall ride down below to find a hidden glider path. This path is the most situational as it can be pretty slow, but also grants you protection from a shock, if you guess the timing correctly on the final lap. The density of this track and the freedom to express player creativity makes it an absolute standout among World's very best. They tell stories about glow-ups like these. Wario Stadium underwent a complete transformation, taking it from one of Mario Kart 64's worst to one of Mario Kart World's best. This track is electric, with massive ramps with huge air times, explosive flames and sloshing mud, multiple intense wall ride cuts, precise rail jumps, and a stellar rendition of the original track theme. Wario Stadium truly has it all. My favorite section takes place right at the very end, right before the massive ramp with 3 possible shortcuts. First, there's a small mushroom cut through some off-road. Second, there's a trick into a wall ride into a rail grind on the left wall that takes the turn a little sooner. Lastly, the most difficult path. If you charge jump off of the right ramp and either hit the coin or use a mushroom, you can just barely make it to the top of the right wall for an incredibly tight inside turn. Also, a neat little detail about Wario Stadium is that during Grand Prix and Knockout Tour, you can actually hear the stadium announcer commentating during the race. Small atmosphere additions like this make Mario Kart World feel truly lived in. Despite being a Mushroom Cup course, Whistle Stop Summit is an incredible track with some of the most difficult and satisfying shortcuts in the entire game. Taking place on a mountaintop train station accompanied by a whimsical tune with plenty of woodwind instruments and a banjo, this track is delightfully technical. making great use of the wall rides and rail grinding, as well as a super difficult to pull off cut near the end of the track where you launch off the rail, immediately trick off the wall, and utilize your momentum to clip the billboard and land on an upper rail that is normally inaccessible to take a very tight turn during the final stretch. I'm not sure if the developers ever intended for players to access this route in a normal race, but I think it stands to highlight how designing courses as both a track and an open world environment can lead to players breaking the boundaries of what's possible in Mario Kart in ways that haven't been done before. The train acting as a timed hazard that can block off certain routes or even be used as a route itself is a really fun concept as well. Whistle Stop Summit is a phenomenally designed track with plenty of room for player expression and creativity, and yet, there are still a few more tracks that I think have it beat. Mario Kart World's Wario Shipyard is likely my favorite water-based track in the entire series. This abandoned pirate cove has a plethora of fun cuts and truly nail-biting set pieces as you sail across the 7 seas, drifting in and out of decaying pirate ships. Just to name a few of my favorites, right off rip, you can charge jump off of this ramp and trick into this wall to take a really tight flying turn. In the second third of the track, you can trick or charge jump onto this rail, grab an item, and launch into a tree to fly over a majority of the water. You can land on these ship masts to rail grind above the water and save some time. On laps 2 and 3, if you have a feather, you can skip the first turn entirely. While I genuinely do enjoy how different water racing is compared to on-road racing, Wario Shipyard feels designed to allow the player to be in the water as little as possible, as if you're playing one massive game of don't touch the lava, or in this case, water. The track is genuinely just very exciting. I can't even recall how many times I've clutched a nail-biting photo finish by taking the final ramp into the wall of the track rather than landing on top. Shy Guy Bazaar was one of my most anticipated retro tracks, and it did not disappoint. While I do miss the midnight purple and vibrant lights aesthetic of the original, the choice to transform Shy Guy Bazaar into an inner palace city in Sarasaland is such a fun choice to incorporate more theming from mainline Mario games. But what makes this track so excellent is the sheer density of this Arabian town. There are obstacles and alternate pathways during every waking moment, and no run of this track is ever the same. Grind along the rails, bounce across the vendor tents, balance across ropes, fly across gaps, glide around walls, charge jump over gaps, dive into the back roads, use the starting boost to trick off a small pile of dirt onto a border rail, and trick onto ropes that take you up above the entire town for a completely alternate pathway. If any track is going to give you arthritis, it's this one. You're constantly moving, constantly maneuvering, constantly acting. This track is electric, one of the most exciting and frenetic Mario Kart tracks to date. Salty Salty Speedway is a track that loves to put you in a comfortable flow state. The use of eccentric accordions and subtle heart backings to create a very comfy yet thrilling melody for a truly excellent track theme. The likely Venice-inspired Lagoon City is home to a multitude of rushing water canals and expansive city landscape to traverse. The executions of shortcuts and tricks in this track make you feel like a real pro despite being pretty easy to pull off. One of my favorite aspects of this track is how the verticality can lead to some high drops into the water below, allowing you to chain tricks off the water physics and maintain your speed. For example, right at the start of the track you can charge jump out of the water and drop back in to chain multiple water tricks. Right after this, there's a long left drift around the corner lined with flowing water to punish you for drifting too tightly to the wall. All of which you can avoid by taking an alternate route up the wall and across some rails, or an even tighter turn by charge jumping onto the waterfall and left tricking off to access a sharper turn. From here, you can chain tricks across rails and trees to take the tightest turn possible, take the intended shortcut and curve around an upper route with a glider, or access that same glider path by charge jumping up the left wall. The standard route takes you down some rapid waters where you can chain tricks as the flowing river rushes downward. The last section is connected to the vast ocean, and while you can take the turn normally or use the aforementioned glider to avoid incoming shocks, you can also mushroom through the boxes up this ramp to take a sharper turn. This aquatic city feels just as dense as Crown City without any of the fluff, and is all the better for it. Airship Fortress is the final retro remake to discuss, and it is the embodiment of doing so much with so little. When Airship Fortress wasn't brought back for the Booster Course Pass, I won't lie, I was a little disappointed. One of, if not the best Mario Kart DS track was left out to dry, but thank God they didn't forget Toad Circuit 3DS. Thankfully, it seems like Airship Fortress Revival was being saved for Mario Kart World, and we are all the better for it, because this rendition of Airship Fortress is powerful. I love how the track theme builds slowly at first, with a few acoustic guitar strums and a backing cymbal before exploding onto the scene with bombastic and thunderous horns. The entire track is encompassed with smoke particles and burning debris floating through the air, which really sells you that this part of the world is Bowser's war-torn wasteland. From the start, you can either dodge the incoming bonsai bills in the main path and grab some items, or ride the rail and take a huge turn cut by switching rails at just the right moment. From there, you'll avoid rocky wrenches and take a sharp drift into the cabin of the ship, dodge some swaying flamethrowers, and launch yourself out of a cannon into a nearby fortress pillar. A detail I really appreciate is that each character has a unique cannon fire animation, a returning element from Mario Kart Double Dash and Mario Kart Wii. Characters will flail their legs due to the sheer velocity of the cannon fire and grip onto the wheel for dear life. Character animations are one of Mario Kart World's best elements. No game in the franchise has portrayed the Mario cast as earnestly and full of life like Mario Kart World does. After surviving the cannon barrage, you take one enormous drift down the tower's spiraling slope. This section is intense. The confined space makes it incredibly easy for shells and bomb-ombs to bounce off walls and collide with other racers. Bananas are easily hidden by how sharp the turn is, and everyone is just itching to release that full rainbow mini turbo at the pillar's exit. Just one more short stretch with an accessible feather or mushroom jump cut before the lap is complete. Airship Fortress is not only one of the best retro remakes in Mario Kart World, not only one of the best tracks in Mario Kart World, it is one of the best Mario Kart tracks of all time. You knew this was coming. Great Question Block Ruins is the Mario Kart World track. Set in the clouds high above a dense jungle are the ancient ruins of a golden temple, complete with a vibrant art direction and an incredible backing track with powerful drums and whirlwind instruments, and some of the best track design in the entire Mario Kart franchise. I've always been partial to cloud-based or sky-themed tracks in Mario Kart. Cloud Top Cruise, Sky High Sundae, and Sky Garden are among my favorites in their respective entries, so Great Question Block Ruins was sure to appeal directly to my tastes. From the starting line, you enter a massive hollow question mark block, and you can use a mushroom and super mini turbo to reach a rail, launching you into another rail and around a sharp turn. You can also access this lower rail by timing a charge jump off the main platform. If you don't hit this inside rail, you'll need to do a brake drift on most karts since this turn is really sharp, and you risk flying off the track otherwise. After another quick drift, you enter the most dense section of the track with lots of bouncy clouds, floating chains that act as rails, and wooden rings to trick bounce off of. I'm sure you've seen by now the Mario Kart World shortcut, the one that everyone saw on social media and promptly went, "This game is fucking crazy." And yeah, it's awesome. Launching yourself off of what appears to be an unintended path into big wooden rings in the lower wall of a later portion of the track before flipping back onto the main path feels exhilarating and truly encompasses what makes this game's mechanics so engaging. That sense of thrill you get from using every part of your core moveset to pull off a speedy and satisfying maneuver is absolutely unmatched in Mario Kart World. That's not even the only path through this area. There are plenty of rails and routes to take to separate yourself from the pack, including this one, which you can access by mushrooming through these hidden boxes. How many of you knew this was here? Be honest. The final stretch is one last drift into a glider ramp which sends you soaring back into the finish line. This entire track is perfection, with all of Mario Kart World's best elements melded into one. Yet, there's still one track I consider to be the very best Mario Kart World has to offer. Bowser's Castle is the best track in Mario Kart World, without a doubt in my mind. This track has everything. Thrilling music, great track design, fun and exciting set pieces, technical shortcuts, phenomenal art direction. It has it all. Starting with the music, in Mario Kart 8 and 8 Deluxe, Nintendo began to associate Bowser and his tracks with an intense rock and heavy metal, and that tradition holds for Mario Kart World. This rendition of Bowser's Castle is electric. Each rip of the electric guitar and pounding of percussion sends a static shock through your entire body. The theme is fiery and fast-paced, which also holds true for the track itself, with the entire track being set on top of a massive volcano and high-speed wind tunnels being abundant. From the starting line, you're given a few options. You can either take the upper path up these chains and trick off these rails either into a lower rail or line yourself up for a trick onto an out-of-bounds billboard, or take the normal path through the main route of the Central Palace. If you take the main route, there's a risky but rewarding shortcut to take by tricking off the right set of rails into the wall and back into an arrow billboard. The momentum from your jump and extra height from colliding with the arrows should be enough to cross this big lava crater and skip multiple turns. From here, you launch yourself off a glider ramp into a cloudy, fiery inferno before being spat out onto floating rubble high above the castle itself. From here, the path is straightforward. This high-speed section has you jump through the mouth of a kaiju-sized flaming cloud of the Koopa King and take multiple tight drifts before a final glide to the finish line. There are a couple hazards to watch out for, like exploding lava geysers and falling meteors, as well as large pits of lava you can mushroom through to save yourself time. Also, if you're feeling adventurous, you can forego the road entirely and launch yourself across the tightest possible turns by riding the inner wall of each floating platform, across rugged terrain and under lava falls before safely landing back on the main track. This track's shortcuts demand excellence in precision and execution, but the reward is a tantalizing and overwhelming lead over your competition, making for an exciting, front-running track. Bowser's Castle embodies the very best aspects of Mario Kart World, from the atmosphere to the hazards, to the tricks and the shortcuts, from the music to the set pieces. It's simply perfect, and it will likely go down as one of the greatest tracks in the entire franchise. So we've established that Mario Kart World's tracks are phenomenal. Some of the best tracks, if not the best, lineup of tracks in the entire series. However, we have yet to discuss Mario Kart World's most prominent feature. It's right there in the title, the open world. In the past decade, taking your game to the open world has been a very common next step for a lot of franchises, with many releasing some of their best entries under this new format. However, many other series' approaches to introducing an open world feel incredibly forced and ham-fisted. The game's core open identity feels as if it were implemented in order to follow a trend rather than due to a legitimate spark of creative inspiration. Mario Kart World falls somewhere in between, with some of my personal favorite and least favorite elements deriving directly from the open world. A core element of Mario Kart World is how you can drive from track to track. Every track is interconnected in a large open world with routes, or intermissions as some call them, connecting each and every one. This is the biggest point of contention for the majority of longtime fans, as many feel this deviation from the tried and true Mario Kart formula is too substantial. Rather than playing a guaranteed 3-lap race across one of the game's many tracks, you'll instead spend the first 2 laps driving to the track rather than actually on it. This wouldn't be as big of an issue if the majority of Mario Kart World's world was as fun to race on as its main tracks. This open world can be beautiful, with plenty of fun landmarks and interesting set pieces. I adore being able to explore these tracks and surrounding areas and to better appreciate the level of care that was put into these locations. This open world can also be boring and barren. For every fiery ascent to Bowser's Castle, there's a long and boring desert interstate. For every jungle bridge escapade, there's a large and empty ocean. For every SNES Ghost Valley recreation, there's the endless Crown City Bridge. There's also something to be said about how the open world formula has allowed for different variations of traditional tracks. Since you need to be able to access tracks from multiple directions on the world map, some tracks are altered in different and interesting ways to accommodate this change in entry point. Tracks like Moo Moo Meadows and DK Pass have reverse variants, where you drive the entire course backwards. Other tracks like Crown City and Mario Circuit are built up of multiple different smaller courses in one large location. There are even special cases like a route to Shy Guy Bazaar taking you through an entirely different hidden track within Daisy's Palace that is completely inaccessible outside of free roam, and routes from Airship Fortress and Wario Stadium. They do a lot to add a variety to these routes as well, with lots of different enemy hazards and cars to avoid. Enemies will jump out at you and throw items for you to dodge, cars and trucks will drive by that you can charge jump onto to gain speed and coins, grab dash food and take flight from, and barrel cannons that launch you ahead of the pack. There's an item dispenser buggy with an obviously very intoxicated driver who spills out random items like bananas and bombs to avoid or mushrooms to grab. There are vehicles like trucks and boats that players can take control of to cause chaos and dodge items. There is fun to be had in the open world as you travel the routes between tracks, but their quality is so disparaging that I don't blame anyone for disliking them entirely. That's not to say the open world is entirely a mess, as it brought about one of Mario Kart's best additions in years. Knockout Tour. Knockout Tour is a mode where you drive one long continuous race across Mario Kart World's grand map with multiple checkpoints along the way. Each race starts with 24 racers, but players get whittled down at each checkpoint from 24 to 20 to 16 and so forth until there's only one player left. Knockout Tour takes you on one of 8 predetermined rallies, ending with a traditional lap on Acorn Heights, Crown City, Faraway Oasis, Wario Shipyard, Reverse Desert Hills, DK Pass, Great Question Block Ruins, and Peach Stadium. What makes Knockout Tour so much fun is the intensity of it. The looming threat of elimination is a powerful motivator. It reminds me a lot of survival races from the Sonic and All-Stars Racing series, another elimination-based game mode. Knockout Tour makes excellent use of the open world, often taking you through some of the more interesting open world locales. I do think the limitation of only 8 rallies can make the mode a little repetitive, but you quickly forget how many times you've traveled this route before when you're worried about being bombarded with shells 30 feet from the finish line. To me, the main difference between the tracks and the routes is how you interact with them. The tracks are incredibly dense and free-flowing, rewarding inventive routing and proper execution. The routes are much more simplistic, focusing more on rewarding item management and effective strategy. Knockout Tour is an extension of these item management style races over a much longer period of time. It's an interesting dichotomy, and adds a lot more variety to the traditional Mario Kart formula. The last main online mode is Battle Mode, and to be completely honest, this is a substantial downgrade from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We only have Coin Runners and Balloon Battle. No Bomb-omb Blast, no Shine Thief, and no Renegade Roundup. To be entirely honest, it feels like Battle Mode has become somewhat of an afterthought for Nintendo, only being included for the sake of tradition. 8 Deluxe was an exception to this, primarily due to being an upgraded port of Mario Kart 8. The Battle Mode was a point of contention in the original release, so why not improve it for the re-release? Most of the marketing for 8 Deluxe surrounded the improved Battle Mode. Nintendo was obviously aware of the audience for this mode, so why the lack of attention in World? World's Battle Mode isn't as bad as the original Mario Kart 8, as we actually have somewhat dedicated battle tracks with the expanded areas of Mario Bros. Circuit, Moo Moo Meadows, Peach Stadium, Salty Salty Speedway, Dino Dino Jungle, and DK Pass, as well as returning battle tracks such as Big Donut and Chain Chomp Desert. Not sure why they changed that, but whatever. These battle tracks are pretty alright. They make good use of the open world, rewarding you for exploring the areas on your own in free roam, and the returning battle tracks make appearances as part of the standard race routes as well. To me, Renegade Roundup and Shine Thief were the most fun and addictive battle modes we've ever had. Some of my favorite moments playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe were in the battle mode, so to see them not return feels incredibly deflating. While that may be all the main online modes that Mario Kart World has to offer, there's still one more offering to explore, way down here in the corner. This is free roam. One press of the plus button seamlessly transitions you from the home screen to control of your last played character in the open world. There are a good chunk of things to do in free roam, mainly finding hidden collectibles such as P-switches, Peach medallions, and question mark panels. P-switches are hidden around the entirety of Mario Kart World's map, and interacting with one will spawn a challenge for you to complete akin to Mario Kart DS's mission mode. There's a lot of variety in these missions, with some teaching you how to master the game's many mechanics, others teaching you shortcut routes and strategies, and a few that have you race on homages to Super Mario Kart courses. There's also a lot of monotonous and repeated missions, with many of them using a similar grab all the blue coins or make it to the goal ring formula. I don't really mind the monotony to an extent. The missions are different enough from one another that I didn't mind hunting for all 394 of them. I just think that a few more special missions could have gone a long way. You have the special test of skill missions, which push your abilities and execution to the absolute limit, but there are only 6 of them. Not to say the other missions aren't memorable, but after a while they all tend to blur together. Why not include some more memorable set pieces like bosses, NPC side quests, or time trials against NPC racers? Hell, why not incorporate the actual time trials mode into free roam? You could drive up or warp to a course, talk to an NPC, and race them in a time trial, and winning could net you a new playable racer or costume. I honestly think they could have gone even further with integrating staple modes into the open world. Small side note, it's very annoying that I can't see my individual lap splits after completing a time trial. They appear during the time trial itself. I know the game is tracking it. Why are you gatekeeping? Where was I again? Oh, right, P-switch missions. After completing a P-switch mission, you are rewarded with a sticker. Stickers are little customization elements that you can place on your cart. Only one at a time, which is a little lame. The sticker designs themselves are good. Many of them are based off tracks or fictional companies owned by the characters in Mario Kart World. You got Turbo Engines, Wiggler's Flower Shop, Rosalina Bus Tours, Fuzzy Batteries, and more. These stickers mainly help to add to the world building of Mario Kart World, making it feel like a real, interconnected, and lived-in place with businesses and facilities contributing to one another to make this racing island paradise work the way it does. You can also earn stickers by finding question mark panels and peach medallions. Question mark panels are hidden around each and every course, usually 5, but sometimes more. Exploring the ins and outs of every track helped me to understand their layouts better and to greater appreciate the effort that went into making them. Especially a track as grand and towering as Crown City, I had a ton of fun exploring the city rooftops, the beach, and the back alleys. A lot of these panels are really well hidden or incentivize you to use your movement mechanics in creative ways. They make Mario Kart World feel more like a 3D collectathon rather than a racing game, and I think it's a great way to both get players familiar with their abilities and teach them the intricacies of Mario Kart World's many tracks. Lastly, we have Peach Medallions. Peach Medallions are definitely my least favorite of the 3 main collectibles. Whereas Peach Switches have missions attached and question mark panels have designated locations for you to explore, Peach Medallions are just kind of thrown around everywhere. And I do mean thrown around, as a good handful of the 200 hidden Peach Medallions can only be found in the most remote locations through the most ass-backwards manner. The best of the Peach Medallions are the ones you can see from far away in a high-up location, and you think, how can I get up there? The worst Peach Medallions are the ones you stumble across randomly in a poorly textured corner of the map wondering, how the hell is anyone supposed to find this? My best guess is they wanted players to stumble across them and get a dopamine rush just for finding a shiny gold coin and of course a sticker. Like I mentioned prior, stickers are your reward for everything. Complete a P-Switch mission, have a sticker. Find a question mark panel, take a sticker. Collect a Peach Medallion, here's a sticker. Hit a milestone in races, coins, tricks, distance, stickers, 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 stickers. There are 1,056 stickers in Mario Kart World. I don't think it's unfair to call this an underwhelming completion incentive. Now, I think the P-Switch missions and question mark panels are plenty of fun in their own right. You don't need an amazing incentive to do them. Finding and completing them is rewarding in and of itself. It sure would be nice though. The last main feature of free roam is the ability to use photo mode. Honestly, I'm not usually the type to use photo modes whatsoever. It just doesn't interest me. However, between the abundance of gorgeous locations and a fun roster of characters and karts, the expressive animations and costumes, and the ability to explore free roam with friends, my friends and I had found ourselves commemorating nearly every session of private lobby races with a group photo. The roster of characters lends itself so well to wacky and wild character lineups, and the costumes on top of that with the unique trick animations and expressions, and you have the most expansive Mario Kart cast in the entire series. Firstly, you have your standard racers, your Marios, your Peaches, your Birdos, the usuals. Each one is accompanied by between 1 and 10 alternate costume variations. We got casual wear, pro racer getups, touring fits, bee suits. There's something for everybody. Like I mentioned, some characters have a very small selection of costumes, namely Donkey Kong and Pauline with only 1 costume each. I have to imagine more costumes for the 2 of them are coming with a DK Bonanza themed expansion, because these are some of the last characters I expect to get skimped on costumes. You're telling me Baby Rosalina has 4 whole ass outfits and the best you got for Donkey Kong is some mild padding? Sure. On top of the main racers, you also have a variety of new characters known as NPC racers. NPC racers are essentially track and open world hazard enemies repurposed into full-fledged racers. I've seen a lot of discourse surrounding their inclusion, namely under the description of filler characters, but I couldn't disagree more. While there are certainly a few odd selections like Snowman and Fishbone, many of these enemies are incredibly iconic and important species in the Mario universe. Others, I'm just not even sure why they're classified as NPC racers, considering they've been in previous Mario Kart entries like Drybones, Wiggler, and Hammergrow. Characters like Piantas and Goombas have been long requested as playable characters, and even more so are just genuinely fun inclusions. I'm a big fan of Parabitty and Cataquack myself. If anything, including these characters makes the most sense in a game series like Mario Kart. Where else would you get the opportunity to include some of these guys as playable characters? The only thing that really matters is what weight class they sit in and if they'll fit in a cart. Okay, scratch that last part. It's also an incredibly efficient use of resources. Why spend time making entirely new models and animations for a few extra characters when you can reuse models and rigs for over 20 enemies already in the game? Not to say I wouldn't want other characters, there are a few notable characters who didn't make the cut, like Diddy Kong, Kamek, and the Koopalings. But in a game with up to 24 unique playable characters in a match at a time, I think it's reasonable to prioritize an efficient quantity over quality in this specific instance. There are always opportunities for more racers to join the fray as well. A legitimately big problem with the NPC racers is how you unlock them. which is via the Kamek Transformation Orb, an item used during a race to transform everyone in front of you into a random NPC racer, which unlocks them for that player, and also spawns enemy obstacles on the track. Certain NPC racers like Swoop and Fishbones can only appear in designated areas of the map, being added to a pool of generic enemy racers that can appear anywhere. So, just to recap, in order to unlock a specific NPC, you need to play on a specific track or route, hope that someone behind you uses a Kamek Orb because you can't use it on yourself, and then pray it actually gives you the NPC you're missing. I feel like I can see the vision here. Nintendo wanted NPCs to be something you unlock casually, something to surprise you during a race. However, I and many other players are impatient as shit and want to be able to play as Parabitty from the moment you boot up the game. Thankfully, this concern was addressed via a post-launch update. You can now use a UFO in free roam to absorb and transform into a captured NPC, either by finding one in the open world or grabbing a friend who already has that NPC unlocked. Overall, I think the items in this game are largely improved from previous entries. All of the staple items return, your green and red shells, your bananas, your mushrooms, etc. Some items received adjustments. The Boo now lets you go off-road without slowing down. The Feather has escaped battle mode hell and is now a full-fledged item that you can use to reach high up rails and dodge non-homing items. The Shock now only hits players in front of the user, removes items, and doesn't shrink you as long as it used to. The Bullet Bill no longer damages enemies you collide into, it just pushes them out of the way. The only item change I'm not really a fan of is the Boomerang. Throwing it no longer pushes it to your second item slot, so whenever I want to burn it to get to my other, usually much more useful item, I need to throw it 4 whole ass times or throw it into an invincibility item to break it. We have some returning items as well, like the Mega Mushroom from Mario Kart Wii and the Ice Flower and Hammer from Mario Kart Tour. The Mega Mushroom and Hammer are good items, excelling at mowing down condensed groups of racers, but the Ice Flower feels a little redundant. It's essentially a reskinned Fire Flower. I think it would have been much more interesting if the Fire Flower was changed to act differently from the Ice Flower, maybe charging to throw one big fireball that bursts into a fiery landmine for players to avoid. There's also 4 brand new items, the previously mentioned Kamek Orb, the Coin Shell, the Coin Block, and Dash Food. The Coin Shell and Coin Block are good items since the coin count was raised from 10 to 20 and the increased player count leads to more items being flung around. You'll need every opportunity to gain coins in order to maximize your speed. The Dash Food is pretty great as well. It's essentially a weaker mushroom that happens to also change and unlock new costumes. You get the Dash Food from Yoshi-themed food trucks and stands, and the food stand is usually based on the region of the world you're racing in. While the mushroom aspect of the Dash Food doesn't give you iframes to dodge blue shells, you can still take many shroom shortcuts using them, making front running much more viable. The Dash Food is a very fun and unique item that helps to sell the theming of the game immensely. It's literally a bag of fast food you pick up from a rest stop or food truck, something anyone on a long road trip would do. Another common road trip activity is listening to music, especially the radio. Really fantastic transition there, but I digress. The music in Mario Kart World is phenomenal. It's probably the one thing everyone unanimously agrees on about this game. Aside from the 30 or so original course themes that I've already talked about somewhat, there's over 10 hours of remixes to listen to. 10 whole ass hours. That is absurd. The entire soundtrack features a variety of very whimsical and funky songs encompassing Mario's entire history. You have songs from the 3D Marios, 2D Marios, previous Mario Karts, Wario, Luigi, DK, and Yoshi spin-offs, even the Mario drawing song from Flipnote Studio. It's an incredibly impressive lineup. If I wanted to nitpick, I would question why there's no tracks from the RPG spin-offs, but honestly, with the sheer quantity and quality of pieces in this game, there's not much room to complain. I especially love how there's different day and night variations of many songs, with many of the day tracks being upbeat and frenetic and their night counterparts being slower and methodical. A relaxing backing track to carry you through the night as you drive around in free roam. Comparing these remixes to their original versions shows you just how flexible Nintendo was with their musicians when composing for this game. An underappreciated aspect I love about the soundtrack is how when you transition from a route to a standard track, the music slowly builds into the designated course theme. The adaptive music makes for a completely seamless experience and shouldn't go unnoticed. And that's about it. That's Mario Kart World. I think I've made it very clear that I love this game. I've never been this infatuated with a kart racer before. I grew up playing the Mario Kart series and I've always enjoyed it, but I've never had that just one more race feeling until World. There's something so special about Mario Kart World, and I wanted to express my feelings about it even if it took me over an hour to do so. There's a lot of room for Mario Kart World to grow, but it's already a very unique experience. Despite its shortcomings, I love Mario Kart World, and I hope this recount of my experience has shown you why I am so fond of this incredible kart racing triumph. I hope to see all of you on the track in the future. You can pick up a copy for yourself for the low, low price of... Wait. No, wait a minute. You can't be serious. $80 US? Well, I take back everything I said. This game is dog shit.